so far? My name is Jeremy Bush, and I have the extreme pleasure of moderating this panel. Do I have any Fringe fans in the audience? Lord of the Rings fans? And Sleepy Hollow fans? It is my incredible pleasure to introduce to you Mr. John Noble.
Hear me and I'll just shout. That's wonderful to see you all. Anyway, sorry, Jimmy, over here. No,
They're not here to see me.
I'm ashamed of myself. I see some familiar faces out there too. Some, more later. Okay, go.
So we're gonna start the panel with about 15-20 minutes of just questions that I've actually prepared because I'm shaking. And then for the last two panels, we had me walk through the audience and hand the mic. Instead, we've got a mic in that aisle right there. If you would like to line up when we call for you, just line up there and we'll just go through the run that way. That would be much easier than having me walk through the audience again. So I just for selfish reasons, because that's who I am, you voiced Scarecrow in Arkham Knight. Leading up to that point, Scarecrow was always a very shy, quiet, and almost like weakly voiced character. And you brought such gravitas to the role. How did you decide to go that route with the voice and how you portrayed Scarecrow?
Thank you. Well, I guess the first part about it is that they wouldn't have asked me to do it if they didn't want this voice. But also, it's a beautiful process when you go into one of these rooms. Because there's a producer and a director there, and you start to talk. You just, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And then what we would do, we'd send some samples across to Britain where it's all being put together, and they come back and they'd say, oh, we love that one. Or, can you do that? So it's a bit of a collaboration going forward. And I would offer up as many as they wanted, really. I didn't mind different variations of the voice. So eventually, hello, darling. Do you think I'm talking a lot of rubbish? I might have to get him up on stage in a minute. I love kids. Scarecrow, Batman, yeah. So that's the process, and then it goes on over a long period of time too, Jeremy. It's on that particular show, we voiced that. I voiced it over 2 years, you know. Coming back, it's so detailed, you come back and do more, and you do more, and you do these exhausting 6-hour recording sessions, which doesn't sound much. It's so exhausting being in there talking for 6 hours. But I love doing it, and that's how it came about.
Out of your course of your career, I know I mentioned the 3 big hits for a lot of the audience here. What is your favorite role that you have ever played?
Thanks for that, Jeremy. No, I mean it. I mean, I've been so lucky in my career to play so many roles that I like. But Henry, no. I don't know what I was saying then. Where it went. I thought of an actor that I knew 40 years ago called Henry Salter, and I was going to say his name. Is this aging? I think it must be. Sorry. Walter Bishop. Walter Bishop is my favourite. If I could have, someone said to me a few years ago, all right, sit down and write the perfect role for yourself that you want to evolve over 5 years. I would say, oh, I want to do this fellow, this fellow. No, that looks like Walter Bishop. It would have been. It was such a gift. And then I was very fortunate to work with some writers who knew that whatever they presented to me, I was game to go for it. I mean, I just love getting challenges. And I was always experimenting and making things up, and they'd say, yes, we can use that. So we finished up this extraordinary collaboration where they'd throw really hard things at me, and then I'll do certain things. And my only condition with the writers was to say, look, with the science, at least make it, in theory, no matter how far out, make it feasible. Make it feasible. because otherwise I don't want to do it. Do you know what I mean? And so even if it was some extension of quantum mechanics, if it was feasible, then Walter would do it. He'd give it a shot. And they were really good about that, because sometimes they like to put in absolutely rubbish experiments. And I said, well, Walter must be very drunk or high to do this. And if they stuck with it, that's the way I played it, you know. Thank you.
Your role in Lord of the Rings was a very contentious father role. Your role in Fringe, to the same degree, was a difficult relationship with Peter, who wasn't technically your son, or half of your son. And then your role, it kind of reversed for Sleepy Hollow, where you've got this contentious relationship with your parents. How did those roles inform each other, or how did you feed through those roles?
Look, we all belong to families, yeah? And we think about that. We probably understand some of the issues that happen between parents and their children, even in very healthy families. So that's a bit of a no-brainer, really. I use that as a base, but oh my goodness. You know, even with Denethor, who mostly people hated him when I did him, you know, little children running away from me on the street. That's a true story, I didn't make that up, by the way. But I understood him. And I went back and I understood why he had reached this point in his life. I actually really understood it. And had I not understood it, had I not done that work, then he would have been a two-dimensional character and he wouldn't have worked. Do you understand? So in terms of delivering what I had to deliver in some of those awful lines he had to deliver, you know, when he says, would you rather I had died in front of instead of him, I say, yes, I wish that. What a rotten thing to say. Do you know? But pushed into a corner. That's what he said. Can we close that door, mate? Thanks. So, you know, you make all this... With the Peter one, Josh Jackson is a lovely, lovely man, a dear friend of mine, and like a son to me. We just made this decision that we were going to make this father-son relationship so real, so true, so hard, all the way through, and we never stopped discussing it. We didn't suddenly say, oh, I forgive you for everything and move on. It's too hard. And that was an incredible joy to work with the Canadian Josh Jackson. What a beautiful man. So we did that, and we kept ourselves honest at all times. And the other one, Sleepy Hollow, oh, I don't know. I'm this 70-year-old man with teenage angst, and who's got this mother and father who are the handsomest couple I've ever seen. His mother is so hot. And I go, oh dear, how do you do this? This is really bent and twisted. That one took a bit more of a stretch, I have to tell you. But it was kind of funny after a while when I realised, no, this poor kid has a teenage angst. He was probably buried at 15 or 16, all those unresolved issues about everything that we have at 15 and 16, and suddenly he comes back and he's still got them. He hasn't gone anywhere since then, and that's kind of fun to play that. Although he was quite extraordinary, wasn't he? He went from that stage, and suddenly, at the beginning of the next season, he was a lawyer. What? No. Just assume that he's very bright and he did it by correspondence or something or other. Those little leaps you can take, sort of thing. And I had to study I had to do this incredible study on witchcraft and superstition, because I didn't really follow it too much. And I'm wading through these books and you've got to be kidding, but it's all in there. Sleepy Hollow covered it all, so it was just when I read about it. That one was a toughie for me. I've done other father-son roles. But they're the stuff of life, aren't they? You know, relationships and families. They're the stuff of life. And so it's so real to me to do those things, whilst dealing with other issues, bigger issues perhaps. Next question, please.
With both Fringe and Sleepy Hollow, there's a lot of twists and turns each episode, and different paths and things thrown at the characters. Do you like to know well in advance? And you specifically, like your characters have always known way more than the people that they're surrounding themselves with. Do you want to know what your character knows well enough in advance, or do you play it as it comes to you?
Okay, I don't want to give a little acting lesson, but I will. Each of us, you and I, all of us sitting here, may think we know what's going to happen to us later today. We have a plan what we might do next week. Plans. But we don't know. We don't know. don't know what's happening in the next auditorium. We don't know. What we know is this here. All the character that I'm playing needs to know is what is here and what he thinks is going to happen here. Do you understand the difference? So for me, thank you for your approval. So gorgeous. All I need to know is the immediate. I don't have any interest in the B story over here. It's not within my reality, and it will cause acting problems if I do think about it. Any of you that are actors will know what I'm talking about. So, no, I don't want to know. Sometimes, it's almost like there's two brains. Sometimes I am told that there's this arc will go somewhere, but in the moment, in that time, I have to play just that reality and my acting is it.
Were you told when you auditioned for the role of Henry where that storyline was going to be taking you?
Yes. Having just said all of that, I have to say, oh, yeah. Oh, my God, I've got to turn on. Thanks very much, Jeremy. That set me up. Alex Kurtzman rang me, who's a mate of mine, and he was one of the fellows that wrote the original Fringe. I was back in Australia doing some work, and he said, John, will you come and do this show? And he described the character to me. It sounded bizarre, but also, bear in mind, I think these guys are brilliant writers, Alex in particular. And I said, I listened to it as he described it to me, the first season stuff, is that you're going to be this lovely old guy, and there's all these secrets, you plant all these secrets, and at the end you do that. I said, that is really cool. That is so cool. And that was sort of an exception because he was a warlock, he's allowed to know what's going to happen ahead anyways, that was my justification. And it was such fun playing it, because all the way through that first season, anyone saw it, I was planting little seeds and little clues around the place that no one was getting because I was such a nice guy. And when I did the turn at the end, people started to go back and say, oh my God, he told us that, look what he said there. So that was a great plant to play. That was that particular season of Sleepy Hollow was beautifully written, the first season. Yeah.
Now, speaking of that turn, you have that dynamic turn in Sleepy Hollow where you go from Henry Parrish, who's just been helpful all the way along, to the aptly named Jeremy Crane. How does your mind...
Just got that. You talk about you or Batman.
Yeah. How do you change that dynamic so quickly, or so? How did you manage that?
Because I try to be an honest human being. Honest meaning not I'm a good human being, but honest about how we change. Look at our emotions. We can change company, seriously, like that. We can flip like that. Given a stimulus of some description, we can go to be a really good mood. Someone says something that triggers, and we're in a fury. You know that triggers the hitters? Sure you do. Sure you do. So when you're acting these things, you just have to observe that. You're not locked into one state all day. Something will happen, and you will change. And that's what I do with the characters too. So there'll be a point in the preparation where I'll say, that trigger is going to happen here. So you go from being this nice man to turning into something else. It's all very real. It's all very true of us. And that's what I apply to my acting. Thank you.
So if you'd like to start lining up for audience questions, feel free. The microphone, like I said, is in that aisle right there. Please don't be shy. Come on down. And while we get people lining up, I just want to ask, when was the last time you had red vines? Or are you never going to eat them again for the rest of...
That's bed bugs.
The red vines.
Oh, red vines. Bed bugs would have been a better question. God, I don't like red vines. I don't like them at all. And they became this little thing that started off, and then suddenly it became like one of waterism thing. And then the people who made red vines started to send in boxes of them to the studio and everything. And then wherever I went, people were bringing me boxes of red vines. And I don't know how to stop this thing. I was doing a convention just a couple of weeks ago, and there was people walking up. And I had to confess, I said, look, I don't eat them, but I'll sign them for you. And that was the solution. So they get to keep the red vines. They got a free signature. No, I can't do it. I quite like literature, but not red vines.
So your character on Fringe, one of the major story arcs for him was his journey from the realization that, just because you can doesn't mean you should, and the limits of science and how far should you go or shouldn't you go. So I'm curious as to what you think in terms of, scientific discovery. How much should we be trying to unlock, and how, where do we draw that line?
We should be trying to unlock everything we possibly can in science. Everything. I get so excited when I talk about this, and I do read this stuff all the time. I get so excited, and I don't know, it thrills me. However, it's not the science, it's how we human beings manipulate the science. And a lot of the times we manipulate it really beautifully. Seriously, it makes our lives better, it helps all sorts of things. Occasionally in the wrong hands, as we all know, it's incredibly destructive, and sometimes it just feeds the motor of greed and all those things that we hate. But science is beautiful beyond expression to me, so let's go for it. Thank you.
I just went through like 5 different questions in my head, and I'm like, ah! But anyways, may I say that I love a lot of your work that you've done. It started with Fringe for me, but then I've nerded out over everything else. But my question is going to be, Fringe, can you imagine that maybe down the road they might ever decide to do a movie or some kind of tie-in or something like that? Would that be possible?
Thank you. That's a question that really is asked a lot and interests. I don't know. I mean, I think had something been proposed fairly close to the event, I think that we could have. People go different ways and we all get older, I don't believe that it would come back with the cast that we had. People have gone different directions. So I don't think that'll happen. Look, the bottom line, as much as we love what we talk about and love to talk about our craft and the bottom line in entertainment is money, and if something can't be seen to make money, then it's not done. And that's particularly in cities in this day and age. Okay? And what excites me about it, and I hope excites you about it, is our own creativity. Our own creativity, which brings me to tears sometimes, how beautiful it is that exists within all of us. And so we are told, well, you can't do that unless you can make money from it. Oh, wrong. So wrong, No, we do it because that is to be human, to do this sort of stuff. But to get that made, it's going to cost $100 million. That's not.
No, the reason I asked that is because when Fringe started, Walter was this pathetic kind of lost creature that nobody really understood or felt any sympathy for. But your range of acting throughout the entire series, you had Walter lost on a bench, you had dynamic Walter controlling an entire universe. Like, when you see all those Walters, you think, well, geez, there's so much left more. We want to see where he would grow next. So we would probably pathetically be down on the ground going, please give us more. But no, thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, darling. Yeah. I understood the second part as well. Yes, sir.
Hello. My question's not just in relation to your film and TV work, but also your video game work. I'm not sure if you've been following it, but recently there's been some movement within video game voice actors just to become more organized and get more benefits for a lot of work they do and get acknowledgement and credit for that. So I'm just curious if you had any thoughts on either differences between video game work and film and TV work, or just on that issue in general.
No, I don't. No, seriously, I don't. I understand the question, and I've seen the fact that a lot of voice actors, fine actors, but they're not actors, they don't have that profile, have been saying this is not fair, whereas people like me come in and get a really good wage for it, because we have different things. Or if you're someone else, you might get a lot more than I do too. Seems unfair. But I don't interest myself in the politics, and I'm Australian, who has interests in England, Canada and America. I don't know, it's all different in each country, so I'm going to duck that one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, So first off, I had this more eloquently worded in my head. But in Lord of the Rings, the Steward of Gondor had a very tenacious relationship with Faramir, but he adored Boromir. But you yourself, which son would be your favorite?
Look, parents aren't supposed to have favourites. Look, there are a lot of factors. There are a lot of factors as to why he preferred Faramir if you look at the stories. The birth of Faramir, perhaps the death of his wife. All those factors will come into play in his descent into whatever he was into. But if it was me, God willing, I would love them both enormously. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi. We've all heard about the negative aspects of your profession, stalkers, getting robbed, and paparazzi and things like that. I'm just wondering, have you ever had any issues, any regrets? Does it affect you at all?
I think I haven't made it yet. Be plenty getting stalked by paparazzi. Doesn't happen to me. There was one incident, I'll tell you one incident. We were doing, back in 2004, we were doing a world tour junket for Lord of the Rings, and we were being pushed through airports, really taken through with all sorts of things, and there were a lot of pushes around there trying to get in, trying to make a quid out of it, make money out of it, sort of get in. And that was very uncomfortable for us. I remember walking through Los Angeles, my son, who was 17 at the time, was with me, and this bloke came through and he started to hustle us. As they do, they're pretty ruthless. And my son turned around, he was going to take him out. It was like that because I wanted to too. We both suddenly had this flash of testosterone. What we do in the middle of LAX, I'll remember that so vividly for the rest of my life. I loved him for that. Looking after his dad, no, people. In my case, I've never had any bad fans. Never. Paparazzi, they are what they are. Their job is to take photos, and in truth, our job is to have photos taken. Okay, so if you look at it that way. And sometimes if they're annoying me, I'll go and talk to them. And I do this. I did this recently in Paris. There were some people over the road. So I just went over and talked to them. I said, look, I'm going to give you some photos in a minute. I promise you I will. No, and I did. But just leave me for this. This has nothing to do with that. And they said, French. But I did. Sometime later I said, okay, we can do this now. So it's mutual respect. It goes a long way, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, some of them don't appear to be. But the same thing can be said with fans who have their needs and sort of start to get a little pushy. If you just say, give me a moment, I understand your needs, but I've got something else over here, then it puts it on mutual respect. And that's easy for me because I'm not 25 and hot, Sit down, old man. Yes, I am.
So my sort of question has more to do with, I hope I'm right. You started off in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
You did theater for a very long time. You were even a director for quite a long time, 10 years or so. Are you more geared to, have you moved over onto television, film, or is that still your first passion? And part two would be, do you prefer being on the stage or in command, in charge?
I'll deal with that first. I prefer acting to directing for a number of reasons, which we discussed another time. And I did quite well. I had some successes, but I never thought that I was a particularly good director. I worked internationally, so I must have been all right, but I never thought I was very good at it. Whereas acting, I always thought, gee, this is pretty good, I like this. So that's the second part of the question. Apropos the first part, I like stage. I've been back and done 2 stage plays in New York in the last 18 months, and it was wonderful to get back out there. But my preference, I would say now, is television, just because of my personality. It's very fast, and you have to make decisions, and you have to go for them, and there's something very dangerous about that, and I like that a lot. So Instead of with the plays, you might sit 4 weeks going over the same material, or a film you might shoot 2 pages a day where we shoot 8 in television. Do you understand what I'm talking about here? There's something about that pressure of just going, here we go! And the directors don't give you anything. They don't have time in television. So you're on your own. I love it so much. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much.
How is it like playing 2 different people from 2 different universes on Fringe?
Do you know the concept of sliding doors? Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That at a certain point you could go off in this direction or that one. What we saw there was the same core man, the same man up to a certain point in their lives, let's say. These incredibly smart, rather arrogant young men. Then by a choice of circumstances, one went that way, one went that way. They were both them, but circumstances take us in different places. Yeah? So for me, I was always using the same route of the character, but circumstances had led me to another persona, another set of responsibilities than this one over here. It's not as hard once you do it that way. If you think you have to create a whole new character, it must be very, very hard, but I didn't. And I loved it. I loved it. One of my favourite scenes was, I think it was in the finale or something, where they actually allowed Walter and Walton to sit down together in a corridor and have a talk to each other. I adored it so much to have that opportunity, and I thought they shot it really well too. So, yeah, but that's the reason. They're not 2 different men, they're the same men in different circumstances.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Hello, I love all of your work, John. Amazing.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, is there a difference artistically, creatively between, like even the workload between working on a film and working in television, or on stage even?
The difference in the workload?
Yeah.
Yes, television is much more demanding in terms of the workload. It can be very ruthless, and it burns people out. And I sometimes worry about young actors coming into television. All right, let's say you're a youngster, and the dream come true. You come out of drama school or whatever, and they say you've got a series, and you think your world's made. But the realities of that are very different, and no one really prepares them for it. And I think we should prepare people for this. I really do. The demands, and I've seen young actresses come out there, and suddenly they're working 17 hours a day, and their weekends are totally spent just going to promotional stuff, hour after hour after hour, for months and months. There's no glamour in that at all, you know. And when you're on a set, you're not surrounded by admiring fans. You're just other people working as hard as you are. No one prepares them, so people have breakdowns and all sorts of things. It's actually horrible to watch what happens to some. And sometimes young actors let their egos go out too. They start to believe the publicity, which is another great big mistake to make. Did I answer your question? I know enough.
Yes.
I had a sentimental moment with a couple of people I know well.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Oh, it's a hobbit.
The most important thing you ever learned?
Oh, come here, you cute. She just said to me, what's the most important thing you ever learned? What a beautiful question. How long have we got? The rest of the day? Thanks a lot. So many things. I know what the driving force in my life is, and I learned that from somewhere, possibly from an early age, and then forgot it a lot. That love, kindness and compassion are the driving forces of life. I know that. Sounds a bit woofy, but that's I learned from my mother. And then I forgot about it for a long time, and over the years it's come back to me. So that was a huge life lesson for me that stayed with me. In terms of this business, is not to believe your own publicity. You know what I mean by that? Like you hold a whole series of bands going, saying, John, John, what they really mean is Walter, Walter. That's a complicated one. Ask someone to explain it to you. But thank you for the question.
Hi there.
Hello.
As we all know, a lot of really skilled actors don't always get recognized
by fame or by awards, especially when it comes to genre television and movies. And so I was wondering, which actor, like maybe one or two or three actors, do you specifically look up to or admire that aren't necessarily the big famous actors?
Look, that's such a good question and so hard, because then I would be going into theatre as well. And I could be going back 20 years. In the current genre, I would offend by omission, so I'm actually not going to answer your question. I like to see passionate actors, and I like to see technically sound actors, and you can have them both together. You know, in the big world, I'd say Meryl Streep is a classic example, absolute classic example. Yes. I would do it for nothing to go and do a role with her, because she's technically so brilliant, such a wonderful woman as well, and passionate still. And it shows, doesn't it? It really shows. Oh. If you know her, just pass it on, I wouldn't mind. Batman, that's a great t-shirt. Batman. Thank you. Thanks for the question. Hi.
Hi, this is less of a question and more, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm someone who does deal with mental health problems and depression and anxiety and personality disorders. And having Walter as a character who, like, you portrayed him so, like, such a human being with so many different facets, and he wasn't just what was going on in his head. And just to see him so unconditionally loved by Olivia and by Peter, and then in the end to save the universe while struggling with all this, it meant a lot to me to be able to see someone who is going through all this but is still completely brilliant. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you. That is a wonderful compliment. Thank you. And I really, really did go very deliberately to do what you just said. So thank you very much.
In Fringe.
Should we make it dance? Oh, put it up higher. What?
In Fringe, a lot of people get hurt in that show because all those creatures and stuff. Do you ever, in reality, do you ever actually get emotional when they get hurt? Or all of those?
Look, I can tell you something. Thank you for the question. Something that's been worrying me lately is when we look at the state of the world we live in, not so much here in Canada, you've got it right up here, down there. And I wonder why violence is such a huge part of our lives. And then I started to think, well, look at the television we watch. Look at the, in that we learn our behaviours, to a large degree of our behaviours supported by that. And I suddenly realised I'm going to take on Hollywood if I say this out loud, because everything is based on that sort of conflict. But it's not good for us to be constantly watching this sort of conflict. I don't know what you can do about that, except in your own choices to not do it. So it's about Fringe. Josh Jackson and I used to laugh about, in the very early days of Fringe, we do a head count on how many people Olivia had killed in that episode. I'm serious. And one episode she took out 17 people. And I think it was the same episode. She walked into a room full of harmless people and shot about 4 of them and kept going. This is lovely Anna Torp doing this, by the way. Look, you always try to have compassion. Always. So if a character you're talking about, a monster, yeah? If a monster deserves it, whatever the monster represents to you, it's like Puff the Magic Dragon, you know the story. Do we feel sorry for Puff the Magic Dragon when Billy Paper, what's his name, comes no more? Yes, we do. And Puff that Magic Dragon slowly ceased his... You know that song? But it's a lovely story, isn't it, about compassion for an animal? That would be the sort of thing. There was something in Sleepy Hollow where a creature was killed and I felt compassion for it. We had compassion between the two of us. But most of the time, if they're really bad monsters, no. I don't want to be in that scene. Does that answer your question, love? Do you feel compassion for animals? I mean, for monsters?
Yes.
That's beautiful that you do. Good on you. Might be a good way to stop getting hurt one day, if they see that compassion. Bless you.
So, in terms of Lord of the Rings, what's it like having an action figure made of yourself? And you own it.
It's pretty bizarre, isn't it? I got given one once. I didn't think it looked like me at all. But it's pretty cool. And then there's a Scarecrow's got an action figure too, from this one. I don't know. I suppose it's pretty groovy. Yes, it is. But you see, I have to tell you this, we don't know much about any of that goes on. That's called the marketing side of the merchandising side of things, is that we go and do our bit. And then suddenly there's all this merchandising out there that we don't need. A man today came and saw me with this beautiful card with a bit of my shirt in it. One of my shirts. I've never seen it before. I've never seen this card. There he was with a bit of my shirt. Genuine, well, Walter Bishop shirt. But that's merchandising. Someone's making a lot of money, but it's not me. What was the question?
I love your work in Fringe and Sleepy Hollow especially. And I was wondering if you could perhaps share any stories about working with Leonard Nimoy on Fringe, because I was surprised to see him as William Bell, and happy to see him as William Bell, and just whether you had any stories about the episodes that you shared together.
Thank you. I don't know how many, quite a lot of you are young people, and whether you remember Leonard Nimoy, except as some sort of... Even to me, he was a really old man. That's why I sort of had him carved in stone like a sphinx somewhere. When they said the William Bell character, there's all sorts of names being pushed around the place, Mick Jagger and all these people were talking about. No, seriously. And Tom Waits, all sorts of people. Oh, I know. That would have been fun. But then they said, no, you can't be kidding, is he still alive? Sorry, I don't mean to be irreverent. Then he came, this beautiful, tall, distinguished man. And with such kindness and truth and professionalism. And he and I had basically all of our scenes together. He had a little bit with Anna. And we became deep friends in this time. I held him in such respect. And we would just sit down whenever we could and we would talk and talk and talk about things. And it's so beautiful. We'd be doing these scenes and we're doing one particular thing and he came to me quietly and said, John, could you look at me when you're doing that dialogue? Sure, mate. I can't hear you. So he was quite deaf. He was quite deaf. And so what he would do, he didn't want to say that beforehand, compromise your performance or shout or anything. He just said, and it was just an easy adjustment to make it. I felt so honoured to actually be on the inside of that, to then be able to subtly shift things to accommodate a relationship between, a living legend and myself. That's just a small example of the sort of thing that it was, and we did become friends. And I think I may have done the last television scene he ever shot with him, which is a huge burden and a great honour. It makes me quite moved. Sorry.
Did you get to ad-lib Astra's names, and which one was your favorite?
Oh, look, no. Well, we made up many names that weren't included in the script, I can tell you. Jessica Nicole is so wicked, she really is, I love it to death. Sometimes we had an idea, we would present it to the writers as a possibility, and sometimes we just have one out of left field. At one stage I called her Claire. And everyone went, what on earth is that? But Claire is her long-time best friend. And so we threw it as a gag between us. And suddenly it's not Astra or anything, it's Claire. And we go, right, moving on. If you didn't know it, you So after 5 years, you get some of these in jokes. I loved the scene, I have to say, at the end. I think it was in the finale when Walter says to her just as she's leaving, "Astronaut's a beautiful name." It was such a good scene to play with that lady, who considers herself one of my children. She does. She called herself the littlest noble. and she became quite close to my wife and I. And our kids used to come up and visit, so she would hang around with them. And she called herself one of our children, the littlest noble. I love her. Very sweet lady. But no, look, just to answer that a bit more seriously, you never ad lib on television. You just don't. You're really bound to stick to the script exactly as it's written. Because by the time you get it on television, it's already been through many filters. Network and the lawyers who look at it and then the studios, so many filters. So when you get it, you've got to be very careful. If we want to change something, if they want to change a word, then I would go to the director and the script supervisor and say, "May I do this?" If it's anything substantial, they would then ring Los Angeles and say, "Can you do this?" If it's a simple little thing, juxtaposing two words, they can take that responsibility. But you can't do it. It looks like we're ad-libbing, and that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe one last time, I swear. I asked the fangirl question. Now I wanted to ask an acting question. I've acted in the past, and it's something that I've been afflicted with. I'm wondering if, out of any roles you've done, whether as time's gone by and you've grown some distance away from the role, whether you've ever maybe either regretted a choice you've made or come up with a different direction you wish you would have used?
Yeah, look, I think this happens to all of us, particularly in stage work. Any of you that have done any stage work. We can do a whole season, and then the Sunday morning after, God, now I know how to play that. and I thought it was only me, but other actors talk about this as well. Not so much major decisions, but you always try to find out how to make a line work best, how to make it ping. And sometimes you don't get it until it's too late. But not in, I don't think so, in film and television. And one of the reasons there's so much guidance happening, and so much of what appears is not what we shoot, it's what is cut, particularly in television. So the editors have a massive role in the creative process of this. So if you can give them several alternatives of something, they will take the one that serves their purpose best. You understand? And if they're good editors, and I always hope they are, I continue to take risks, but I have an understanding with the editors, and I say this to them, I trust you not to let me look like a fool. It's a very serious question. It's the greatest fear we all have, is making a fool of ourselves. Did you know that? No, it's true. So I'd say, I'll go all the risks in the world, but don't hang me out in the line. That's respect, isn't it? A lot of women, by the way, found that much harder in the past. And I talk to women about it, and they say, "Oh, I wouldn't trust it," because a lot of that was to do with appropriateness and I don't know. But for me, it was always that understanding, that respect between me and the editors. Did that answer your question? Okay.
I'm sorry?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Feel free. Thank you, though. You can always feel free to keep talking.
These are going to be our last two questions.
Just as well as only two people left. We made that deal. I said, when the line starts to run out, so that's all we can do. And just hope it doesn't happen in the first 10 minutes. Said, well, that's the last question, ladies and gentlemen.
John, do you have a favorite work of fiction that you will continually go back to and reread over the years?
I recently started to read Aldous Huxley again. Because the truth's there. I go back into that sort of thing, those incredibly visionary men and women that told us what could happen. And I have, in fact, literally gone back to all of that work lately. Because to me it's an education. It just reminds me of what can and what is. Apart from that, so that's kind of heavy stuff, isn't it? Kind of heavy. Anything that I find that teaches me a lesson. You know, and sometimes you get these incredible moments as a young person or as anyone else, you go, oh, goodness, how did I not know that? It's one of the favourite things, and I hate it, that happens to me, is I think, okay, you're a well-educated man, you know this, and then I'll read something and think, how have I lived 67 years and not known that? It's so embarrassed. I start to blush immediately, or not knowing the truth of it, so I move and brush and thinking about it. Words of fiction, yes, but that's it.
Do you have a favorite poet?
Robin Redbreast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage. Blank. You know?
No.
I'll tell you why I say it. It's this idea that we all have problems with being controlled or controlling other people.
Yep.
Yeah. And so Robin Redbreast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage. It's just a way to think about how we react with people. It's a beautiful line. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I was just wondering, many actors, they have a story to why they started acting. They all have a start, and I was just wondering, what was the moment that made you realize that that's what you want to do for the rest of your life?
Thank you. You may have heard this answer too. I mean, I've done other things. I studied law and I worked in other things, in accounting and taxation and a series of things. When I started to act, and it was as a result of doing an elective at university, when I first did it, it was the first thing that I've ever struck in my life that I knew I was really good at and that I really, really passionately wanted to do. The first thing. Now, that sounds a little bit like a fairy tale, but for me it wasn't. So all the other things that I'd done gently made way, and then I just sort of pushed through into this, really focused, by the way, to make myself better and better at it. But it was just so thrilling. It's like we often talk, don't we? Find the thing you're passionate about in life, and everyone says, oh, that's easy for you to say. And it is. But if you can, and I was lucky, that's what took me there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And also, my mom can't be here, but she says she really loves you.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been emailing.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I get a big round of applause for Russell?